Jaya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Gaurachandra Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Jaya Gadadhar Jaya Srinivas Jaya Mukunda Vasudevi Jaya Hari Das.
Hare Krishna and a warm welcome to all our viewers. And in honor of Gaur Purnima, the GBC SPT brings you the Every Town and Village series to help devotees dive deeper into Srila Prabhupada's principles and strategies for serving Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. And to talk to us about this today, we have a very accomplished Vaishnavi. I would like to invite Her Grace Radha Mataji. Hare Krishna, a warm welcome to you on behalf of myself and the GB Strategic Planning team. Um, Mother Radha is a lawyer by profession, and she is the international Vaishnavi minister, also involved in a lot of outreach related services, helping and serving Vaishnavas across the world, but especially in the US. And today we have her talking about a very, very interesting and relevant topic in relation to Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is actually devotee care and outreach go hand in hand. And this is so relevant because we see this across the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu talks about preaching, but always at every step remembers that how important and he actually shows us by his example that how relevant and important is caring for devotees and Vaishnavas. So this is what we're going to have her talk to us about. And once again, a warm welcome to you, and the floor is yours. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Om Gyana Timirandasya Gyanan Gyana Chalakaya Chakshur Unmilitamina Tasmai Shri Guruvade Namaha. Vanchakalpatarubhis Chakripasindubhya Eva Chapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Well, I am very honored to be here with all of you today. And this is a topic that is very close to my heart. Relationships with devotees, between devotees, are really at the core of our movement. When I was first asked to speak about this topic, I started by looking at what do the words mean? What do the actual words that we use mean? Devotee care. So care is defined in a number of different ways, but there are some that are particularly relevant to our discussion. So I will talk about that. I will also talk about how we use relationships and relationship skills, to manifest this care and this outreach. Devotee care means to provide for the needs of the devotees. It can also mean to take care, to do something with serious attention and really emphasize trying to do it properly. And the last meaning is to feel concerned or to feel that something is important. And all of those are involved in devotee care. If we want to take care of devotees, we have to understand, what are their needs. And primarily, we are looking at what are their needs in the context of how to help them become more Krishna conscious to make spiritual advancement. We should take that very seriously. We should do that service with great attention, and care. And at the heart of it, we have to believe that this is an important service. We have to believe it is important to take care of devotees. So this is the mental attitude, the ethos that we have to cultivate so that our communities are prepared to take care of devotees. The other half of the topic rests on the word outreach. And outreach means reaching out, obviously. But according to the dictionary, it also means to extend services beyond current limitations. In other words, the doctor is reaching out to the underprivileged who haven't previously had access to medical care. In our case, we're reaching out to people outside of our circle of what we call devotees, right? So what are we offering them when we reach out? Well, we should be offering them the same thing we're offering devotees already in the circle. And that is, the meeting of their needs, the care and attention, and understanding their importance. So really, these two topics aren't completely divorced from each other. They're really, on a continuum from caring for the most recognizable, identifiable devotee to caring for the brand new person who's, never heard of Krishna consciousness before. So we may have different approaches with people at different levels, but the fundamental meeting their needs, being serious and doing it well and valuing them, those things have to apply in all of our relationships. And really, relationships are at the core of Krishna consciousness. The whole point of Krishna consciousness is for us to improve our relationship with Krishna. And in order to do that, we have to have a relationship with a spiritual teacher, and we have to have a relationship with other devotees, right? It doesn't matter, how well we organize the physical resources. That's important, and we have to manage them well. But if our relationships aren't healthy, if our relationships aren't supportive, then we can have the most beautiful temple, the best deity worship, and still fail to make advancement in Krishna consciousness. So relationships are the key to everything. In these relationships, we are representing Srila Prabhupada, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and all of the Vaishnavacharyas in our dealings with each other and with people that are new to Krishna consciousness. They act in other people's lives in large part according to the way we carry the message. So we have to carry the message in the mood, that they would want us to carry. I heard a Christian preacher say once that you want to be a door and not a window when you're sharing the good news with others, right? And what he meant by that was sometimes we reach out to others in order to show them how advanced we are. You are on the outside, I'm on the inside, and you can look through that window and see how cool it is to be on the inside, right? That's not outreach, and that's not devotee care, right? That's my ego running away with me. What we want to be is the door that opens and invites someone else in, to a deeper commitment, to a new commitment, whatever it may be. And what we're saying then is not look at me, but look at what you can do. You can come through that door. You can increase your service. You can become a devotee. That's the message that we need to carry. And if we do that, it sets the stage nicely for devotee care. If I remember that my job is to facilitate others' growth in Krishna consciousness. So we briefly need to talk about who is a devotee, right? And we need to talk about what are the instructions we've been given about how to associate with devotees. And then, I'd like to talk just about some practical considerations that, I have found helpful to think about. When we talk about devotees, when Prabhupada talked about devotees, that word can carry a range of meanings, right? So sometimes Prabhupada would say devotee, he meant Uttama Adhikari. Sometimes he would say devotee, and he would mean someone who chanted Hare Krishna even once. My husband and I have done congregational development type work pretty much our whole 30 years we've been married. And one of the things that we have found very effective is to treat everyone, to acknowledge everyone as a devotee, right? That if you want to come to a program just because you like the prasadam, or just because your friend is coming, or just because you knocked on the wrong door and decided not to leave, whatever the reason, you're part of our family, right? You are welcome here. So again, cultivating that mood of an expansive definition of devotee is important. The instructions that we have also inform how we're going to approach devotee care. So before we get into how to do this, what are the rules, this kind of thing, we have to start with what are we told is the mood of devotee care, is the mood of outreach, is the mood of associating with devotees. why are we doing this, right? Because my Guru Maharaj asked me to. Well, why did he ask you to? And for me, it goes to looking at Srila Prabhupada and thinking about, why did he undergo such severe austerity to leave India, at 69 years old in uncertain health, to travel all the way around the world and end up in a place where he had no support system. He had no resources. He had only Krishna. And this was not easy. Sometimes we think that the pure devotee, they're a pure devotee, they can do things I can't. It doesn't mean that it's not a sacrifice on their part. And Srila Prabhupada made a huge sacrifice for us. And what was the purpose of that sacrifice? It was for others to become Krishna conscious. That's what he asked, Krishna to help him do. Please make my words suitable for their understanding so that they will learn to love you, right? Krishna is Suridam Sarvabhutanam. He is the best well-wishing friend of every living entity. He loves us. We are his separated parts and parcels. And what he wants is for us to turn toward him so that we can exchange love with him and through him with all living entities. So if I am inviting someone, say I want to be friends with someone, I want someone to come to my home, and I send that invitation through a third person, I seriously hope that they go to that third person and say, my dear friend, Radha Dasi would love to see you. She cares about you so much. She's making a special meal for you, right? Please come. Sometimes we, kind of approach it from the negative. You're in Maya, your whole life is built on a false assumption. The material world is terrible. And if you want to, come and do what I do, someday you can be as cool as I am, right? It's not a very appealing invitation, right? And it's not just with new people. Sometimes we do that with each other, right? Sometimes we forget that devotees are evolving, right? That what someone was 10 years ago has nothing to do with where they are in their Krishna consciousness today, right? And so we also need, as we're thinking about inviting people in, we also need to be inviting people up. You can make advancement in Krishna consciousness. What can I do to help you do that, to help you deepen your relationship with Krishna? So this mood of love, right? This mood of inclusion is really important. And not only is it important because Krishna loves us, but our Gaudiya line is founded on this very principle that everybody qualifies for the mercy. That's the unique message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that through this congregational chanting, even those who do not qualify to worship the Lord, even they can not only worship the Lord, but they can connect with him. They can become his pure servants, and they can go back to Godhead, right? Everybody's included. The Lord invites everyone. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu invites everyone to come. And I just wanted to read one paragraph, one verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is in the Adi Leela, chapter 7. In distributing love of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates did not consider who was a fit candidate and who was not, nor where such distribution should or should not take place. They made no conditions. Wherever they got the opportunity, the members of the Panchatattva distributed love of God. So nobody's disqualified based on who they are. Nobody's disqualified based on, what conditions they're in or what service they can or cannot offer. Krishna consciousness is literally open to everybody. So when we are helping each other, bringing in, new people, that's the mood that we have to cultivate. Because what this implies is that everybody matters, right? Every single devotee matters. Sometimes we think only the advanced devotees matter. The only one I need to please is my Guru Maharaj and his god brothers. Everyone else, is not so important. And that's not the mood of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and it's not the mood of Srila Prabhupada. Everybody matters, right? Another principle, general principle that we want to bring with us is what constitutes care, what constitutes outreach, right? Sometimes we think that it's in the verbal messages we give. right? I'm going to meet you on the street. I'm going to show you the Bhagavad Gita. I'm going to tell you all about, the theory behind, the way the material universe is set up, how that relates to the spiritual universe, what God's identity is, how you can worship him, get your donation. And I have done outreach, right? And you absolutely have. But that can't be the total definition of outreach. And similarly, if some devotee is struggling, right? And we go and we say, Prabhu, you're not your body. Get off the mental platform. Just do your service, right? Okay, that's an attempt at giving devotee care. You gave attention, maybe that was all you could say in the moment. But that shouldn't be the extent of devotee care. Part of what we have to understand is that everybody's an individual, right? And so everybody needs something personal to them, right? So outreach and devotee care are not one size fits all, which implies another point. You can't do it alone. I can't do it alone, right? There has to be a community of devotees caring for devotees. There has to be a community of devotees reaching out to new people. So when that book distributor gives that book to someone, another person is available somehow, some way, online, whatever, to say, do you have any questions? Would you like to talk about this? Was there anything you found interesting or, offensive? What's your thought? And another person to say, hey, you'd like to get more involved. Well, come and spend some time with us. Let me come to your house and spend some time with you. So this cultivating of relationships, it has to be part of the community ethos. St. Francis of Assisi is supposed to have said to his disciples that they should preach unceasingly, right? Use words if necessary. So we think of preaching, speaking. I'm preaching to you right now, right? But preaching is more than just the words we say. Many times the words we say are not the most important thing. The most important thing is our example and our actions. There's a saying, sometimes, your actions speak so loud, I can't hear a word you're saying. This is really important because personal change in the heart, does not come from a philosophical understanding. That's a fundamental principle of our philosophy. You can't taste the honey by licking the outside of the bottle, right? There has to be something that touches the heart. And to get people interested in Krishna consciousness in the first place, or to inspire them while they're struggling, we have to make a personal connection, right? It is love. It is, inspiration. It is, encouragement and cheerleading. It is speaking harsh truths sometimes, right? But these are all part of devotee care and part of outreach. So we need to expand our minds, when we talk about who's a devotee and how do we take care of them, and realize it's bigger than just, here's the philosophy, please adopt. All right. So the next topic I want to address is, what is the framework we get from our teachers, our acharyas, and our scriptures on how do we build community? How do devotees relate to each other? And how do we reach out to others? The Nectar of Instruction contains some very important guidelines on how we are supposed to associate with others. Obviously, verse 4, the 6 loving exchanges, we're all familiar with that. We give and exchange gifts, give and exchange prasad, reveal our minds in confidence, and, speak confidentially. The most important word, or the word I want to emphasize at this point, is loving, right? There has to be some love involved, right? And love, Bhakti Tirtha Swami used to say, love is not a noun, it is a verb, right? So we have to care, think that others are important, and want to help them in their Krishna consciousness in a very nice and effective way. All right. So that's what we have to bring to this idea of loving exchanges. And it's important. Srila Prabhupada even says in the purport to that verse, ISKCON was formed to provide a place for these loving exchanges. This is an important part of our Krishna conscious practice, right? And that relates to the next verse, which talks about how do we relate to the different categories of devotees. We mentally offer obeisances to the Kanishta Adhikari. We offer humble obeisances to the Madhyama Adhikari, and then we surrender and take instruction from the Uttama Adhikari. Right? And what is the quality? What is the quality? What makes somebody a Kanishta Adhikari, right? Well, it is said in the Bhagavatam, in the 11th canto, that a Kanishta is somebody who may worship the deity perfectly in the temple, but does not know how to associate with others. And it's not just devotees, doesn't know how to associate with devotees. It's devotees or people in general is the language, right? So how we treat others has a profound effect on our Krishna consciousness. For self-interest alone, we should be cultivating this mood of compassion and love, right? And what is our duty in respect to others, right? It is to facilitate the service of others. Everybody's goal in our Krishna consciousness movement is to increase their service. My goal is to increase my service. So what can I do for you that is actually going to be helpful for you? Well, I can help you increase your service, right? And you can help me increase mine. And that's the mood that we have to bring. Once we have this, understanding the mood, the need for relationships, the need for love and reciprocation within those relationships, and the understanding that valuing others is an important part of our advancement in Krishna consciousness. So what next? Well, the next topic I want to address is self-care, right? And we often forget self-care. When my daughter just had a baby, and I'm at her house helping her take care of the baby. And one of the first things that you have to tell a new mother is, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your child. You have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to let somebody else take that baby for a while so that you can do those things. And it's not negotiable. It has to be done. And it's the same thing, as mothers, we know it's the same thing the child's whole life. You have to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. But as devotees, as preachers, as, outreach persons, however we think of ourselves, we have to take care of our own well-being and our own sadhana before we can help anybody else with theirs. Right? You can't give from an empty vessel. So the first person that you have to care about is yourself, right? And many times we think, well, that's Maya, right? Let me just sacrifice everything for Krishna, right? So we can sacrifice everything that is ours to sacrifice for Krishna. Largely what is ours to sacrifice is the illusion that we have anything to sacrifice. Everything belongs to Krishna. My body belongs to Krishna. The subtle body, my mind, my intelligence, these belong to Krishna. And he's given them to me to use in his service. So just as I, would take care of my boss's car if he let me drive it, I have to take care of my material body and my material mind, and, to make them the most useful, get the most possible use out of them for serving my spiritual master and serving the devotees. Sometimes in an emergency, we have to go over our limits of endurance, whether it's physically or mentally, but we can't live in that space, right? So there has to be time where we take stock of our mental and physical health. There has to be time that, we give our minds and our bodies the things they need to be healthy. An important corollary to all of this, particularly when we're talking about the mind and the subtle body, is that in order to take care of ourselves, in order to know what we need, we actually have to be introspective. What is going on inside our heads? What are the subconscious messages that my mind is telling me? These are important to know about, not just on a material level, but because they affect our practice of Krishna consciousness and our relationship with devotees. Right? Actually, introspection, understanding our own feelings and our own motivations, is a very important part of anartana vritti, right? It's kind of a fundamental truth that if you don't acknowledge that you have a fault, it's hard to get rid of that fault. If we don't acknowledge that there are unwanted things in our hearts, it's hard for us, to make the proper endeavor to get rid of them. And ultimately, Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, ultimately it is by their mercy that we are getting rid of any anartha. We can't do that for ourselves. But what introspection allows us to do is to stop holding on to the anartha, right? I can't remember where I first heard this, and it may be from Srila Prabhupada, that our minds have been in the service of our false ego for, unlimited spans of time. So the mind is very, very expert at telling us the things that we need to protect that false ego. And that false ego is the source of our anarthas, right? So the mind is protecting our anarthas, right? If I have envy, I cover it up with I'm not fault finding, right? I'm trying to protect the sanctity of Srila Prabhupada's movement. I'm pointing out hypocrisy. This is a big anartha that I have, that, I am the social reformer who can see, all of the abuse that's going on in our temples. And, I need to speak out about, how everyone else is treating devotees so badly because I'm the one who can see this. Yeah. That's me trying to lord it over the other devotees. Okay. So when I examine my motives, right, then I realize, I really don't care whether this devotee is getting abused or not. What I care about is that people listen to me and do what I say. Right? So knowing that makes me a lot more reasonable when I'm talking about caring for devotees than I would be if I was coming from a place of I alone, can tell you what's wrong with our movement and how to fix it. The mind frequently lies to us, right? And this is important because a lot of our actions and reactions are based on things the mind is telling us that we may not be fully aware of, right? Sometimes I have a habit of doing something that is not in line with my values, right? Maybe I'm not totally honest. Maybe I'm, harsh or mean to somebody. That's not who I want to be, and why do I do that behavior even though it's not who I want to be? Arjuna says, why, Krishna, why do we do these things even when we know they're wrong? And part of it is because my mind is telling me a story that activity fits into. My brother and I have a strained relationship, right? He's an alcoholic, right? And so his story is that I've always been trying to control him and abuse him and, never been fair to him. And my story is I've always tried to help him and he's so ungrateful. And whenever we interact, somehow we fall back into those stories. Whatever I say to him, he reacts with anger because I'm trying to control him. And, however he responds, I'm angry because I'm just trying to help him, right? And when I take my story out of the picture, right, then I don't have to react or overreact to his reaction, right? Because I can look at this from the standpoint, and this is part of what detachment means, that, this is not about me. This has nothing to do with, am I helpful? Am I not? Am I a good person? Am I not? This is a person who is in pain, and this is how he's manifesting his pain. And then I can actually, be more helpful to him, somewhat helpful to him, as opposed to no help at all. Okay. So one of the ways that we can get some insight into, what is my mind doing? What's going on up there? What are the subconscious messages that I'm not even aware of? Is to pay attention to our own emotions. And I think both, our philosophy and modern society can tend, if not properly understood, to discourage us from looking at our emotions, right? That's, get off the mental platform. I don't know if devotees still say that, but when I was a new devotee, that was, a regular instruction, get off the mental platform, just do the service. But knowing that I feel unhappy when someone else succeeds, right? It's not great for me to feel that way. And I really didn't want to know that about myself. But once I know it, I can explore it. Why do I feel unhappy when someone else succeeds? Well, because I feel like I'm not as good as that person, right? And, then I can ask myself, why does it matter that I'm not as good as that person? Well, Krishna won't love me, right? Okay. Then my intelligence can say, wait a minute, Krishna loves everybody. This is not a competition between devotees for Krishna's love. There's an unlimited amount. Everybody gets as much as they will take, right? So you don't have to be afraid that there's not going to be a place for you, in Krishna's world. He's saving that place for you. So these are the kinds of introspections that we have to engage in. And it's particularly important when somebody's bugging us, when we're annoyed with someone, when we get into a conflict with someone, to really explore what's underneath, right? What is the lie that we're telling ourselves? I'm not lovable. What is the pain, that we are trying to escape from? And how to do that, is not just another class, but a series of classes. But take away, please, the point that we should be doing this. We should be aware of what are the wounds in the heart, the misconceptions, the, troubles that we are carrying with us, so that we can release them and let Krishna take them away. The next point I'd like to make about outreach and devotee care is, about relationships in general, right? Is that they depend on Shravanam Kirtanam. They depend on hearing and speaking. That's how we communicate. And it's important to do them in that order: hearing and then speaking, right? So many times we want to approach devotee care or, outreach with a script, right? This is what I'm going to say to you. This is the philosophical point that, it is going to help you with your advancement in Krishna consciousness. And I'm not really taking into account what kind of message you're ready for, or, whether you're in any shape to listen to a message at all, or whether you have some other need other than, verbal instructions. Okay. Anybody who's distributed books, or done fundraising, any kind of thing where you're seeking some reciprocation from the other person and you don't necessarily have a pre-existing relationship or a close friendship, you learn very quickly that if you don't take an interest in what the other person is thinking, or, what their experience is, what they have to say, they're not going to be inspired to take that book or to give that donation or whatever it may be, right? Fundraising is often talked about as friend making. You make friends, right? And then by the natural course of reciprocation, some funds start to come in. So when we're doing devotee care, whether to an already identified devotee or a new person, who just hasn't realized they're a devotee, we have to know where they're at. We have to know what they're struggling with. And that means we have to listen, and we have to listen to understand, not to defeat or to judge. I find myself sometimes, someone will bring a problem to me, and my first thought is, wow, devotees can't do that. You can't fall down and take intoxication. No, that's wrong. Don't, what are you thinking, right? But the person already knows that, and they're coming to me because they know what they're doing wrong, and they can't seem to figure out how to stop doing it, right? So my role in that circumstance is not to tell them what they already know, not to quote unquote preach to them. It's to help them figure out, okay, well, what do you need to stop taking intoxication? What can we do? What resources can we find for you? So that you can deal with this problem, right? That requires a much greater investment of my time and energy than simply to give somebody a philosophical panacea or tell them chant Hare Krishna and Krishna will take care of it, or the many other things that we sometimes do in lieu of actually caring for the devotees. Right. So hearing is very important. When Srila Prabhupada was in New Vrindavan, back in the beginning of the movement, there was one program where everyone's sitting outside on the lawn in front of a home, right? And one of the young ladies did not have a chador or a sweater. And Srila Prabhupada, as he's talking to the devotees, he looks at her and he says, "Are you cold? Don't you have a sweater?" And then he turns to the temple president and says, "You must ask them what they need. They will not tell you." He's talking about the ladies. They will not tell you. You must ask, and that's important advice. It's an important instruction. It's not just advice. It's an instruction to any of us who are, and that should be every one of us, who are, fulfilling that duty of inspiring those around us, inspiring new people. Every one of us has this duty to ask, "How are you?" And listen to the answer. Is there something I can help you with? And listen to the answer and to respond accordingly. One of the challenges in dealing with new people particularly is how to get past that initial resistance to the unfamiliar, right? Because we're all taken aback when something's new, something's outside of our experience, somebody looks really different from what we're used to. There's I think it's a sociological, biological phenomenon that anything that looks too far outside of our experience is a little bit scary, right? So it's even more important when we're dealing with new people to take that time to find out, where are they coming from? What is something about them or about their life that has a counterpart in Krishna consciousness? How can I make Krishna consciousness relatable to them, right? So again, it's about that interpersonal connection, knowing something about them and saying something in a way that they're going to be able to accept. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, austerity of speech consists of speaking things that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, not agitating, and in speaking, the truths of the Vedas. So when we speak to devotees and newcomers, the same thing applies. We want to tell them the truth. We want it to be based on Vedic wisdom, but we have to say it in such a way that it's pleasing to them, that it's not agitating to them. In other words, to say it in a way that they can accept, right? And sometimes that includes saying to someone, you are completely in Maya, you need to knock it off right now. But we have to have a certain kind of relationship with them before we can say that, and so we always have to be thinking of the individual circumstances, time, place, and circumstance. All right. Some other points that are important when we're attempting to care for others. Okay. We talked before about how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu makes it clear that every person qualifies for Krishna's mercy. Therefore, every person matters to Krishna, right? And so individuality, right? Individuality is an important part of Krishna consciousness. We are not all supposed to be the same, think the same, look the same, act the same. That's not what Krishna wants. He doesn't want clones, right? He wants his individualized parts and parcels with their own unique personality and characteristics that are eternal. He wants a relationship with each one of us, right? And if even one is missing, it's one too many, right? Because he loves us all. Right? Sometimes we talk about unity in diversity, right? And we have a mood of like, okay, we have to have unity and diversity, because we all can't get along, and some people are just wrong, but we have to have unity and diversity, so I'll go along with it. Unity and diversity is actually our greatest strength. There's a whole realm of research on healthy family systems, healthy organizational systems, where it's shown that if you are monolithic, if everybody thinks the same way and acts the same way, you will not be as successful as families or corporations or whatever, where there's a diversity of viewpoints, right? Because the material world requires a diversity of approaches, right? So we can embrace individuality, not just tolerate it. We can embrace it, right? Srila Prabhupada gave Shyamasundar Prabhu an instruction on this idea of embracing individuality. Shamsundar Prabhu was asking Srila Prabhupada, how do we avoid seeing people as objects, right? And I can really relate to that question because I think in modern society, we tend to do that. I remember as a young lawyer being in a meeting where our managing partner was telling the group of associates, you're all replaceable. None of you is special. I can put an ad in the paper and have 10 people who could replace you at a drop of a hat. And so you guys need to work really hard and yada, 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 right? And that was so inspiring that I started looking for a new job. How can you work for somebody who doesn't value you? Why should you work for such a person, right? And so we think of people as objects, right? Any employee will do this job, and I don't really care whether it's you or somebody else, right? So Shamsundar asks Srila Prabhupada this question, and Prabhupada at first doesn't understand the question, right? He says, well, they have individual propensities, right? And Shamsundar repeats the question, and Prabhupada says, but they have individual propensities. And finally, Shamsundar says, oh, you mean we are supposed to value the individual propensities that everyone has? And Prabhupada says, yes. So when someone's different from us, that's our opportunity to help them figure out how to use that difference in Krishna service, how to approach, the service in the temple or whatever, leading with their strengths, right? So that unity in diversity, valuing the individual, is critical. And our care of devotees, it also matters who someone is personally and what they're going through, right? If we go to a doctor, we don't want him to just say, okay, you're a woman, you're 61, you weigh this much, your height is this, here's your prescription. No, he's got to know, what are my symptoms? What's my condition, right? And so similarly, when we're dealing with devotees, it's not enough to simply say, okay, we'll chant Hare Krishna, right? Their individual circumstances matter. Their individual needs matter. Our circumstances and our needs matter. And the act of taking care of someone in that very personalized way is extremely important. And on an institutional level, we look at, big things like numbers of books distributed, number of Lakshmi points collected, big, measurable things. We don't necessarily have any systemic way of valuing you helped that devotee in their spiritual life. You rescued someone or helped rescue someone from a spiritual crisis. So sometimes we think that's not important. And it's probably the most important thing we can do. All the big accomplishments rest on the community of devotees being spiritually strong and healthy. So without people caring for each other, we will accomplish nothing. And if you have the opportunity to help a devotee, to help a family, just know that what you're doing is crucial for ISKCON survival, that it is pleasing to Srila Prabhupada and pleasing to Lord Chaitanya and to the senior devotees. Please feel, that you are doing something important, because you are. I talked about doors and windows earlier, and talked about inviting people deeper in, right? And this is a real knack. But one of the things we can remember when we're helping people advance in Krishna consciousness is that ultimately everyone wants Krishna consciousness. There's a very nice advanced disciple of Srila Prabhupada, Mother Nidra, who lives in the USA. And she is, one of the best distributors ever. And she gave a class once on how to distribute Srimad Bhagavatam. And that's one of the things she said, is that everybody really wants Bhagavatam. For whatever reason, their mind is telling them that they don't. But the desire of the soul, the nature of the soul, is to want to worship Krishna, right? So we have to connect with people on that basis. Cast your net widely, open the door widely. My perception, and this is just my experience, my perception is that when I was a younger devotee, there was a lot more emphasis on helping people engage in devotional service. There was a mood of, if we get this person to do some service, Srimati Radharani will be pleased with that person. She'll recommend him to Krishna, and we can all make advancement together. That's the way to do it. And sometimes right now, I sense that we have more of a qualification, right? We want to see if you're really qualified to do some service. We want to see how serious you are. We want you to admire, I want you to admire me doing my service. And I don't think that we should lightly set aside that, that engaging people in service actually helps them make advancement in Krishna consciousness, that it's our duty to engage others in service. When I first met the devotees, I was very, very profoundly moved by Srila Prabhupada's words, and very, very, very discouraged by the devotee lifestyle. It didn't appeal to me. I had no intention of taking it up, and I was happy to, help the devotees to, come to kirtan, and, but I wasn't going to be a Hare Krishna, for heaven's sakes, right? Gunagraj Goswami, and not just Gunagraj Goswami, many devotees helped me to get over that particular anartha, thinking that I was too cool to be a devotee. But one of the things that Gunagraj Goswami did is he always reflected to me that I was a devotee. Even though I wasn't following the regulative principles, I wasn't chanting 16 rounds, I wasn't going to Mangala Arati, I wasn't self-identifying as Hare Krishna, he always treated me as if I were a devotee. And one of the things he did was come to me and say, look, you're a lawyer, you're living outside. It's so important for us to be able to, show people that you don't have to live in the temple to be a devotee. Would you let us have a program at your house once a week, and we can bring the people that we're cultivating so they can see that, you can practice Krishna consciousness at home. And because I like doing favors for people and, feeling good about how generous I am, I was like, of course, Maharaj, yeah. And so week after week, devotees came, they brought prasadam, so many nice devotees gave so many nice lectures. And it didn't dawn on me till years after that most of the time there were no outside guests, right? This was Gunagraj Maharaj engaging me in Krishna service, right? And it did have an effect. And I did become, more involved with the devotees and get more association and become more hungry for Krishna. And that was his mercy, right? So by hook or by crook, right? He was going to get me involved and trust that Prabhupada and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would do the rest. That kind of mercy, is rare and valuable, but we are each capable. This is the point. We are each capable of that kind of mercy, right? And again, not just with newcomers. Maybe there is somebody who's been coming for many, many years, but nobody's ever asked them, to do whatever the service is, to give a class, to cook a Sunday feast. I don't know, but always be thinking. Devotees are always evolving. How can we help this person come to the next level? How can I myself come to the next level? And what do I need for that? Right. So self-care and care of everyone else. We need to know what we actually need and how we can provide that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, please remember, Krishna loves everybody. Every single person you meet is beloved of Krishna, right? Bhakti Tirtha Swami said, treat everyone you meet as if they were the person you love the most, right? And I always reflect on what the world would be like, what my world would be like if I could remember to do that. But actually, everyone we meet is the child of the person we love the most, Krishna. We've forgotten that we love him. They've forgotten that they love him, right? But we should cultivate that mood of caring for everyone we meet. Remember that we represent Krishna, Prabhupada, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to outsiders and also to our community members. If I'm short-tempered with my kids, right, it has an effect on them. If I'm short-tempered and rude to devotees, it has an effect on them. So remember who we represent. When we make a mistake, because we will, we lose our temper or whatever. When we make a mistake, own it and apologize. It's not hard. Okay. And ultimately, we need not just, individuals, but we need a community ethos where everybody is supporting everybody else to advance in Krishna consciousness. Right? So sometimes we can accomplish that by speaking, but even more powerful than speaking to others about this concept is simply doing it, simply modeling the behavior. And you will be amazed that if you make a concerted effort to start supporting devotees, to letting them know that they're valued, to appreciating them, it spreads, it's contagious, right? So that's what I have to say, and I'm hoping there are some questions or comments.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Radha. I think that those were some really nice gems that you shared in relation to devotee care and outreach. And we have some feedback from members, which I think Shakshi Gopal Prabhu, our tech support, would just flash on the screen. And yeah, we just have Krishna Kids with Andrea. I think she says, I just love this including and welcoming attitude. Everyone is a devotee, just at different levels of awareness. So yeah, just some nice feedback. And I just, yeah, we have Marahari Prabhu, who is saying wonderful topic and very inspiring content. Thank you, Radha Dasi. So yeah, I was just actually even thinking about as you were talking, just reflecting on this fact, what you were saying, that relationships are most important, and we are actually representing the mood of Srila Prabhupada. So that puts such a sense of responsibility on us, and our behavior is not just the prachar, but the achar, the behavior that we exhibit. And also, a very important point which you shared is that how we all are actually evolving, and it is so important to be sensitive to that fact with devotees, that the devotee I knew 10 years back is this devotee is somebody different who has changed and gone through so much of transformation materially and spiritually, and be sensitive. And that every devotee matters. You can be senior, junior, but we all require that personal care, and which comes from the community of devotees. And we are so fortunate to have that in ISKCON, like globally, locally, nationally. And it's just about developing those interpersonal connections. And I think what was really very close to my heart and what touched me the most actually was, this what you were talking about is that, and you expanded on that in relation to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu too, is that change doesn't come from philosophical understanding but from personal connect. So we as a spiritual movement with this vast philosophy, it's so important to understand this, which actually was the mood of Lord Chaitanya, that he knew all the philosophy, but he was so loving, to his associates, to the devotees. And I think that's to the crux of it, that you could know all the philosophy, but you don't understand that somebody is a person. And what you just said some time back, a part of Krishna, you've actually missed the whole point of the philosophy, which Krishna is trying to explain. So those were some wonderful gems that you shared, and that's going to be my take home. And I'm sure all the members also would have, in their own way, some special comments and realizations that you shared. So thank you so much for that, um, Mother Radha. That was very thankful. And I just want to tell our members that this particular talk is going to be on the SPT platform, on the Facebook and the YouTube channel. So if you would like to hear it again, which I would like to hear it, because there were so many important points about devotee care. And or if you want to share it with your community members, you can just do right there at these platforms. And we still have a couple of last events here before we close in to Gaur Purnima. So please join us for the next couple of days. And thank you very much, and wish all our audiences, including you, Mother Radha, a very auspicious Gaur Purnima festival.
Jai.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.